Hello everyone. Am I audible? Hello, good morning Ankit, Vandit, Avi. So you guys joined the first. That's great. Yesterday, I was, kind of shifting all my belongings from Delhi NCR, came back to my hometown. So at the same time when class was planned, that is why I had to postpone it for today. But then now it's fine. So, Aryan, hello. So here we go. Today we'll be doing the third episode of RC, right? Two have been done. One is philosophy, other is science and technology, right? So now we'll be doing environment, episode 3 of RC 99, environment. So you know how to do it. I will be showing you an RC questions basically. First the questions, four questions, and in some question you need to read the options, some you don't. And once you've done that, so every question will be shown to you for exactly 30 seconds because I'm training you for the real CAT. That is what you need to do in CAT as well. 30 seconds into 4 is 2 minutes actually. Then we'll go back to the RC, which you'll be reading in 3 minutes. So in 5 minutes, you'll be done with reading the questions and the RC. And when you read the questions, you need to, make small single word, two words notes at what the question is asking. And if the options are relevant, look at which some options which can be relevant. I told you already which options to read, which not to read. Just need to write the one word, one keyword of option below the question. So that is how you will. This is what you'll be doing in 30 seconds for each question. All right. Then you go back to the RC and try reading it. And while reading it itself, your mind will automatically look for the cues to answer the question. All right. So that is what you'll be doing. First 2 minutes, questions reading. Next 3 minutes, RC reading. Cool. And after that, I'll be giving you 2 minutes, 30 seconds each to solve each of the question, which means 7 minutes you'll be doing one RC. That is what your speed will be. Is that clear? And after I'll be explaining, which will take me like around 10 to 15 minutes to explain the RC and the questions as well. Is that clear? You're welcome, Ankit. Hello, Yash, Apur. Okay, Willie. Okay, so is that clear, everyone? What I just told you? I hope it is. Yes. So without wasting a single minute, because every minute is precious now, let's go to the RC. This is the first RC. I'm going to start the timer. There's 10 minutes time in which you will be doing a lot of things. Here we go. And I'm going on mute and invisible. So first I'll be showing you the questions one by one. Okay. I'll be visible here till I tell you the questions. The author primarily, the author suggests that attempts to interpret dolphin intelligence through human categories are flawed primarily because we have four options here. Here comes the second question. 30 seconds for each of the question. Okay, don't miss. Here we go. The third question. Ankit, that is not possible because I have written this passage in the morning itself. So it's not possible you have read this again. Probably you must have read about dolphins. That might be a chance because dolphins and humans, a lot of passages have been written already. But this one, no, not possible. Hello, Shubham. Now going to the fourth question. Okay, Shubham, see, I'm going to the questions now. I'm just showing the questions to you guys. 30 seconds. See, this is the fourth question. After this, I'll be showing you the entire passage. You'll be getting 3 minutes to read that. Okay. So now the time starts for the passage. As you see, the timer has like 7:10 at 4. I expect that you will be done with the passages. All right. So now I'm going on mute and I'm going invisible, guys. All right. All right. So tell me your answers. What options have you marked? Okay. All right. Question three again. Just a moment. This is it. In case you want anyone who wants to see any question again for 30 seconds, I'll show them. All right. So let me explain now. How was the passage? You like it? So once I explain, you'll be getting the correct answers. After that, I'm sending a link. On this link, you'll be posting your scores. Okay? RCY scores. Got it? Did you see the link? Okay. So your scores, RC wise, one by one, you will be posting. Let me explain the passage now. So now I'm putting my timer for 10 minutes. Well, for centuries, humans have approached dolphins with a mixture of admiration and appropriation. But before that, let me read the questions. The author suggests that attempts to interpret dolphin intelligence through human categories are flawed primarily because, okay, dolphins lack the cognitive sophistication required for symbolic reasoning. Human and dolphin cognition evolved under fundamentally different sensory and ecological conditions. All right. Humans have insufficient biological data on dolphin neural architecture. Dolphins display inconsistent social behaviors that defy categorization. Okay. All right. Then comes next one. Which of the following, if true, would most weaken the author's claim that dolphin behavior interpreted as altruism may actually be ecological strategy? Okay, so I need to read the passage to answer this. That is why I'm not going to read the options here. Okay, now you understand which in which question we have to read the options, which in which we don't have to. Like Avi doesn't read options at all, right? Avi, you told me once. The passage implies that human ethical frameworks may fail dolphins because dolphins cannot communicate their preferences to humans. Human morality is fundamentally incompatible with evolutionary theory. Human criteria for welfare do not account for the acoustic structures essential to dolphin cognition. Dolphins possess emotional capacities far superior to humans. Which of the following best captures the author's central argument? Dolphins should be studied as potential precursors to human like intelligence. Human dominance over dolphins is ethically justified due to evolutionary superiority. So, things that I'm marking over here, right? Oh, okay, Akash. Things that I'm marking over here, these are things which you will be writing in your real GAT. The human dolphin relationship reveals the limitations of human centered models of intelligence. Dolphin cognition is too primitive to be meaningfully compared to human cognition. All right, let's see. So here we go. I'm going to be visible now to all of you. Mm, okay, I think it's better not to be visible because it captures most part of the screen. So here we go. For centuries, humans have approached the dolphins with a mixture of admiration and appropriation. Okay, admiration for the intelligence and sociability. Appropriation is in assuming that such traits render them comprehensible in human terms. ठीक है, यहाँ लग रहा है ठीक है कि the traits can be comprehensible to humans also because we also feel intelligence and sociability. The long-standing tendency to view dolphins as aquatic humans reveals more about the human desire for kinship outside our species than about the animals themselves. All right, this is a kind of a question. Okay, despite decades of research, the cognitive interiority of dolphins remain opaque. Opaque means not opposite of transparent, that is not visible. Not because it is primitive, but because it is structured around evolutionary pressures alien to our own. I think this answers the first question. Evolutionary pressures alien to our own. That means we too means humans and dolphins. They have gone through different kind of evolutionary pressures, which means the answer to first can be the second option. Option to first question can be the second option. So, in my mind, thinking second can be true. Okay. Do you understand that? Let me read the further passage, paragraphs. Maybe second is true. Human intelligence evolved primarily under conditions of terrestrial survival, tool usage, hierarchical social organization. Dolphin intelligence, by contrast, emerged within the fluid, acoustic, three-dimensional environment of the ocean. The communication depends on echoic patterns and rapid auditory mapping rather than visual symbolism. The very sensory foundation on which meaning is constructed diverges sharply between the two species. Thus, attempts to translate dolphins' cognition into human analogs be fundamentally misguided, not merely linguistically insufficient, but conceptually distorted. All right. Analogs, analogy. So that means option B is for sure correct. Isn't it? This first one talks about dolphins lack the cognitive sophistication. Not really. Okay. They lack through symbolic reasoning, they're not very sure. But the author is sure about one thing that dolphins go through this acoustic, sound-based reasoning. Symbolic के लिए नहीं शायद नहीं है. But is that the reason that we are that the studies are flawed? Coming to second, humans have insufficient biological data. ये तो not mentioned. Dolphins display inconsistent, not mentioned yet. Maybe will be mentioned in future. But then because we have option B, which is totally in sync with what we have read till now in the first two paragraphs, B is totally correct. There's very, low chance that we might go wrong, but obviously, if we read the entire passage, we'll be sure about that. So, so the thing is, A option can also be true, but in A option is kind of very narrow. Right. It talks about the dolphins lacking the symbolic reasoning, cognitive sort of sophistication for symbolic reasoning, while B talks about humans and dolphins, both the cognition and also sensory and ecological conditions. Sensory means it can be symbolic, it can be acoustic, and ecological is also given over there. That is why B is a better suitable option. Coming to, okay, let's read further. Yet dolphins consistently force humans to reconsider the boundary between human and non-human minds. Their capacity for cooperation, play, grief, and even what appears to be moral restraint has troubled the assumption that complex ethical behavior requires human-like rationality. Observations of dolphins assisting injured pod members, temporarily adopting orphaned calves, or forming protective rings around vulnerable individuals present a challenge to anthropocentric theories of moral development. But the temptation to read such acts as evidence of altruism may be another projection. This is important. Okay, what is altruism? परोपकार. You know that, right? दूसरों का भला करना. That is altruism, benevolence in a way, right? Okay, so what humans interpret as compassion might instead be a form of ecological strategy or social cohesion, no more moral than the coordinated hunting of wolves or the alarm cells of meerkats. So, wolves का coordinated hunting होता है और meerkats and similar species उनका alarm calls होता है. क्या पता dolphins के लिए ecological perspective हो, ना कि compassion. Okay, which gives us idea about this one. See, second question, which says, which of the following, if true, would most weaken the author's claim that dolphin behavior interpreted as altruism may actually be ecological strategy? So this kind of question, it's critical reasoning and new information is required that is given in the options. Let's read the options. So author ये मानता है कि ये ecological strategy है. Now we have to weaken that claim that it's not ecological strategy, but it is actually compassion. Do you understand that? What we have to prove? We have to prove that the dolphins are actually altruistic. They are actually compassionate. Well, first says dolphins consistently aid injured members even when doing so reduces their likelihood of survival. Wow. A looks correct to me. It is going to weaken. This shows the ultimate form of compassion, ultimate form of um, selflessness. Because even if someone bets their lives on helping someone, A looks correct to me. Let's B also. Dolphins pods engage in cooperative hunting behavior across multiple generations. That is not an altruistic behavior. That is coordinated hunting, right? Dolphins often abandon sick or weak individuals under extreme predation pressure. This is again not altruism. Dolphin alarm calls increase group cohesion during migration. This is out of one. Alarm calls group cohesion. ठीक है तो ये तो actually strategy है ना. A is totally in sync. Okay, we have solved two questions by now. Okay, okay, okay. चलो अब ये ethical frameworks की बात है एक और कौन सा है central argument question है तो पूरा पढ़ना ही पड़ेगा. Okay, let's read further. Now we go to next paragraph. The deeper philosophical issue is not whether dolphins possess human-like traits, but whether human traits are the appropriate metric for interpreting another species. Our tendency to attribute intelligence based on linguistic ability, problem solving, self recognition in mirrors may simply reflect our investment in modes of cognition that mirror our own. Dolphins may be highly intelligent in ways that escape human measurement in dimensions of sonar based reasoning, underwater mapping, or acoustic creativity for which humans have no cognitive analog. So, dolphins also have, dolphins might be very intelligent, but that intelligence might be very different from humans. The ethical implications of this are unsettling. If intelligence can take radically different forms, then human moral frameworks, which rely on notions of autonomy, sentience, and suffering, what is sentience? Thoughtfulness, may be inadequate for understanding dolphin welfare. Captivity, for instance, deprives dolphins not only of physical space, but of acoustic environments essential for their psychological functioning. A dolphin confined to a tank experiences not only confinement of body, but collapse of the aquatic world through which it perceives meaning. To evaluate dolphin well-being using human criteria, exercise, nutrition, companionship may miss the structural empowerment of their sensory universe. Exactly. So if I'll tell you what does that mean. That humans might have tried to, kind of study and research about dolphins, and they must have put them in captivity in huge tanks, thinking, okay, this huge tank or dolphins will be happy. But no, even if the tank is huge for the physical movement, it's not huge enough for their acoustic abilities because they depend on the sound waves. All right, clear. So that is why whatever studies humans do will not be a proper study because it will be devoid of dolphins' actual environment. Is that right? You got that? Ironically, the closer humans come to knowledge, acknowledging dolphin complexity, the more ethically compromised human behavior becomes. Knowing that dolphins exhibit advanced cognition while continuing to exploit them for entertainment, military use, or tourism places, humanity in a moral double blind. Our cognition of their intelligence has not produced corresponding transformation in our practices. Instead, it has amplified the contradiction between admiration and dominance. Exactly. So humans are like, okay, this animal is like me. Okay, let's use them in circus entertainment, right? So the thing is, this is the irony over here. The irony is, if humans are trying to kind of research whether dolphins are aquatic humans, then humans should be giving them enough uh, acknowledgement, enough respect, right? So now it becomes it's more than admiration, it's dominance. That do you understand that? That is the irony. You understand the irony now? Perhaps the true significance of the human dolphin relationship lies not in similarity, but in incomprehensibility. Dolphins invite humans to consider that intelligence may not be a ladder with humans at the top, but a landscape with multiple peaks, some of which we cannot climb. In that sense, dolphins are less mirrors than reminders. Reminders that human cognition is one possibility among many, and that understanding another mind may require more than analogy. It may require relinquishing the assumption that our way of thinking defines the measure of all thought. Now, what does that mean? And humans feel that there are so many peaks, the highest peak is one in which we are. But now, we need to understand that there can be huge landscape in which a lot of high peaks are there. And some peaks are for us, and some peaks are for other animals. Do you understand that? Such a beautiful imagery. This is the figure of speech is imagery. समझ में आ रहा है? The figure of speech here is imagery. When author tries to produce an image So a landscape of peaks, and earlier we used to think there are a lot of peaks and we are on the top, but the landscape of peaks is there, and on different peaks there can be different species. Is that clear, everyone? Do you understand the imagery part over here? Yes or no? Tell me, be quick. Why you guys are so much silent? Oh, the passage implies that ethical frameworks may fail dolphins because dolphins cannot communicate their preferences to humans. Passage does it imply that? Not really. There's no mention of, kind of communication between humans and dolphins. We cannot go with that. B says human morality is fundamentally incompatible with evolutionary theory. Fundamentally incompatible with evolutionary theory? Not really. Evolutionary theory of dolphins or what? So this is an incomplete statement. Then comes human criteria for welfare do not account for the acoustic structures essential to dolphin development. Exactly. Dolphins possess emotional capacities far superior to humans, that is not mentioned. So C is correct because dolphins are into acoustic environment. D. Which of the following best captures these authors' central argument? Dolphins should be studied as potential precursors to human-like intelligence. Human dominance over dolphins is ethically justified due to evolutionary superiority. The human dolphin relationship reveals the limitations of human centered models of intelligence. Dolphin cognition is too primitive to meaningfully compare to human cognition. Now, B is something which his author is against, and it's not a central argument, it's just a supporting argument, right? Um, Potential precursors to human like intelligence, this is far fetched and not mentioned anywhere out of context. C looks correct to me, and dolphin cognition is too primitive, not really, because the author gives a landscape with different peaks are there. We don't really know which peak are we on. So option C is the most plausible choice. That's all. Is that clear now? Any doubts? Ankit, you have a doubt? Ask me. Yes, Akash. Any doubt? Ankit, your doubt? So I think a lot of people are here now, and 18 viewers. We are सिर्फ कम ही आते हैं. जल्दी से like वाइक कर दो. Only 5 likes, and go to the second passage. I think you enjoyed, didn't you? So if you did, throw some likes, guys. Don't be myself in throwing likes, and then we'll go to the second passage. Ankit, question 2 में why not D? Weekend dolphin alarm calls increase group cohesion during migration. ये strategy होगी ना? Ankit, this is a strategy. See, what we have to weaken, we have to weaken the strategic part. We have to support the altruistic part. Okay. So option D talks about alarm calls increase group cohesion during migration. Migration के टाइम पे कॉल किया कि चलो भाई अब भागना है, जाना है, यहाँ से निकलना है. ये सारी बातें डॉल्फिन से बातें की आपस में. What is migration? When you move to one from one place to another due to any kind of ecological situations. तो वो कॉल करेगा कि यहाँ से चलते हैं, यहाँ चलते हैं. तो ये जो है, जो डॉल्फिन अलार्म कॉल्स है, ये ग्रुप कोहेजन बढ़ाता है. इट इज नॉट जस्ट ऑल्ट्रुइस्टिक, इट्स ऑल्सो, सी, it's a fine balance between altruism and strategy. Now thing is, if the dolphin calls out to their friends, that might be altruism, but it calls out to the entire species. So that's not just altruism, that's also a strategy. You know why? Because it's calling out to all the dolphins, not to other animals, the species. So D somewhat does that. You're right. But A is better because A talks about the survival itself. The dolphins don't even care about their survival. All they care about is aiding the injured members. Clear? ठीक है. अलार्म कॉल सिर्फ एक दो को नहीं करते, वो तो फिर सब लोग ही कर रहे होते हैं ना. जैसे मान लो किसी गांव के अंदर आग लग जाए और सब बोले भागो 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 भागो, सब भागते हैं, तो वहां क्या ऑल्ट्रुइस्टिक होता है? नहीं. दैट्स अ स्ट्रेटजी. नोबडी थिंक्स अबाउट ऑल्ट्रुइज्म एक्सेप्ट, ठीक है, अपनी फैमिली फ्रेंड के लिए सोच सकते हैं, पर पूरे गांव वालों के लोग ऑल्ट्रुइस्टिक नहीं होते. वो क्या होते हैं? एक स्ट्रेटजी है कि यार भाग जाना चाहिए, हम सब इंसान है, सेम गांव में रहते हैं, कुछ लोग मर गए तो आगे हमारा काम कैसे चलेगा? दैट इज स्ट्रेटेजी, राइट? Hope you got it. Cool. Now coming to the next one. I will show the questions first. 30 seconds for each question. Okay, time up for the questions. Let's go to the passage now. You're getting 3 minutes for this. So 11:14. Read till 11:14. Ajay, I read your query. Just remind me after I'm done with this passage. Okay, I'll explain. Are we question number two? All right. So let us read this. Okay. Cool. Done. Mark your answers, everyone, once. I can see only Avi, Ankit, Shubham, Shoaib. These are the only people who mark the answers. In the comments, tell me your answers, options. Okay. First, let me read the questions. The author suggests that the melting of polar ice is epistemic because it, well, what is epistemic? Aryan, okay, Aryan, I'll send that. So in the philosophy class, I talked about epistemology, right? The study of knowledge. So this is something that is related to knowledge. Epistemic because it creates new scientific opportunities to for studying marine ecosystems. Then we have eliminates physical evidence that records the Earth's historical climate, reduces the accuracy of climate prediction models, prevents scientists from visiting remote polar regions. Okay, all four options are totally different. Let's see. Next one. Which of the following, if true, would most weaken the author's claim that psychological distance hinders public response to polar melting? We should read, right? First, we'll read the passage, then we'll come back to this. I cannot read the options right away because we don't know what the passage talks about. The claim is psychological distance hinders public response to polar melting. Okay, let's go to third one. The passage implies that geopolitical interest in the melting poles is problematic primarily because it prevents scientific research collaborations among nations. It prioritizes economic advantage over environmental preservation. It encourages migration into previously uninhabitable groups. It leads to excessive investment in renewable energy resources. Okay. Question four. Which of the following best captures the author's central argument? Okay. The melting of polar caps is primarily a scientific puzzle rather than a moral challenge. The polar regions have always been misunderstood due to their remoteness. The loss of polar ice destabilizes not only ecological systems but also human frameworks of meaning. Global warming will eventually reverse due to Earth's natural cycles. All right, let's see. For most of human history, the polar regions functioned less as geographic realities and more as metaphors. Who was asking metaphors and uska difference, है ना? Irony. Okay, I'll tell that. ठीक है. So when I say metaphors, so basically that means that humans have been discussing polar regions in a fancy way. Okay. The पोलर रीजन भी ये होता होगा वहाँ बर्फ होती होगी वहाँ पे ऐसे जानवर होते होंगे all those things they're more of people did not know much about the geography over there even if they know still because they are remote nobody goes there at least in the South Pole so they are metaphors blank spaces on maps where the mind projected mystery danger or divinity the ice immense immobile seemingly eternal, became an unconscious stabilizer of human imagination, a silent guarantee that the planet possessed fixed boundaries, yet the rapid melting on the polar caps of Anthropocene in the Anthropocene That's an era, eon. Anthropocene destabilizes more than coastlines. It unsettles the conceptual architecture through which humanity has understood climate, permanence, and responsibility. All right. Climate, permanence, and responsibility. The polar ice sheets are often treated merely as indicators in climate graphs, but their significance extends far beyond metrics. They serve as thermal regulators, reflectors of solar radiation, and archives of atmospheric history. Ice is a form of memory. Each layer traps ancient air, pollen, volcanic ash, and microscopic organisms, producing a chronology of Earth's past climates. To melt the poles is to erase a library within frozen time, dissolving evidence before we have fully deciphered it. The loss is not the psychological but epistemic. Do you understand that? So loss is epistemic, not the psychological. Um, See, these ice caps have been formed, or still being formed. Now they are melting actually from quite a long time now. So there might be some kind of microscopic organism, some viruses, some ancient fossils that are trapped inside the ice. Yes or no? Right. And if they're trapped, so obviously a lot of information is already there, isn't it? A lot of information is already there. Now, so I think we can answer the first question, which says the author suggests the melting of polar ice caps. Polar ice is epistemic because it creates new scientific opportunities for marine ecosystems. That is too narrow an option, cannot be true. B. Eliminates physical evidence that records the Earth's historical climate. That can be correct because it is a kind of memory which helps. So ice caps are memories. Reduces the accuracy of climate prediction models. That's not mentioned anywhere. To prevent scientists from visiting remote polar regions. Not mentioned. So B is correct here. I think all of you marked it right, right? Okay, all of you did it right. Cool. Next, yet the melting cannot be understood solely as a natural process. Unlike past climate shifts, today's retreat of ice is entangled with human activity, industrial emissions, land use change, and the expansion of high energy lifestyles. The poles, once imagined as untouched wilderness, now record a presence in the most literal sense. Soot, plastics, and chemical residues cross oceans and accumulate in the Arctic snow. The illusion of remoteness is shattered. There is no faraway left on the planet. Humanity's shadow falls even on regions where humanity never lived. Such a nice statement. Okay. Because, there's an age of information technology. Even if you don't go anywhere, still you can see everything because we have technology, right? Don't have to visit Greece to know what Greece is all about, isn't it? Now, ironically, the very abstraction that once protected the poles from human intervention now hinders collective response. Because the melting unfolds in places few will ever visit, its consequences are perceived indirectly through delayed sea level rise, shifting weather patterns, with the slow disintegration of species that depend on ice. So basically, some people do not, a lot of people, and almost everyone, do not think much about polar ice melting. The reason is simple, because it's happening very slow. Probably the effects will be seen after 10 generations, isn't it? That is why people not pay much heed to it. The psychological challenge is not denial, but distance. How to care about a catastrophe that is spatially remote, temporally gradual, and experientially intangible. The geopolitical stakes, however, are anything but distant. As ice retreats, new sea routes emerge, mineral deposits become accessible, and military interest intensifies. The disappearance of the poles does not produce global unity, but global competition, as nations seek economic advantage in the wake of environmental loss. The melting thus reveals a bitter paradox. The destruction of ecological stability may be accelerated by the opportunities that instability creates. Okay, how? See, thing is, geopolitical interests. See, if the polar cap is they are melting, there'll be new routes, military interests. So obviously, maybe this humans somehow for geopolitical interests start destroying the ecosystem more than what is being done naturally. Getting it? That is what the author is mentioning in the last line. Yet perhaps the greatest transformation is conceptual. The poles have long functioned as anchors of stability in Earth's climatic imagination. Their apparent permanence gave humans a sense, however illusory, that the planet possessed self-correcting tendencies, natural breaks against excess. The melting exposes the fragility of this belief. A world without stable polar caps is not merely warmer, it is intellectually unfamiliar, forcing us to abandon assumptions about predictability, reversibility, and the resilience of human complex systems. Now, I don't know whether how many of you have understood this statement, this paragraph. It talks about, it's more of a philosophical thing that polar caps. I'll be going in full throttle science. Should I? Okay, I'll just tell you superficially that polar caps, if you if you still remember the Earth's axis of rotation, do you remember that? So it's tilted around the polar cap. So they are self-correcting bodies, right? And if the ice is not there, so basically poles are getting destabilized, which will destabilize the entire ecosystem of Earth, planet Earth. The polar collapse therefore marks a shift in planetary consciousness. It confronts humanity with the possibility that the stable world we assume into existence may never have existed at all. The ice melts, and with it melt the metaphors that made the planet seem knowable, bounded, and safe. So it's a kind of, okay, there are two layers, एक upwards, एक नीचे, the metaphor which is protecting the earth. That is what the metaphor is all about in this case. Okay. Now, second, which of the following, if true, would most weaken the author's claim that psychological distance hinders public response to polar melting? All right. Studies show that people engage more with issues that directly affect their local environment. Documentaries featuring polarized laws significantly increase public activism. Governments rarely act on scientific reports regarding a long-term climate change. Polar melting has already caused property damage in multiple coastal nations. I want you to answer the question because now we have gone through the entire passage. A lot of people have not marked this, but those who have, tell me what's the reasoning behind it. Okay, Shoaib, why do you think so it's be? See, first one says study shows that people engage with more with issues that directly affect their local environment. Now, this thing strengthens the argument, right? Here we have to weaken कि डिस्टेंस होगा तो रिस्पॉन्स देर में आएगा तो यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है कि पास वाली चीजों पे जल्दी रिस्पॉन्स स्ट्रेंथनिंग documentaries featuring polarized laws significantly increase public activism. So now, through this, if people look at the documentaries, they get activated. So this is kind of strengthening, weakening. See, governments rarely act on scientific reports regarding long-term climate change. Okay. पोलर मेल्टिंग हैज यहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट की बात हो रही है आमतौर पे लोगों की बात पब्लिक रिस्पांस की बात नहीं हो रही है बट या गवर्नमेंट इज आल्सो पब्लिक बट दैट इज फॉर डेमोक्रेसी सो गवर्नमेंट इज अ वेरी vague term so we cannot just think of government as a democracy because we are Indians. That is why this passage is global. So C is something which goes weird, vague. Polar melting has already caused property damage in multiple coastal nations. Property damage out of context there. So B is something where people are actually concerned. So B is the one that weakens. Exactly. That's right. Coming to the next one. The passage implies that geopolitical political interest in the melting poles is problematic primarily because what? It prevents scientific research collaborations among nations. Passage doesn't imply that. It prioritizes economic advantage over environmental preservation. Yeah. In the last, it's mentioned here, last second last paragraph. It encourages migration. It leads to excessive investment in renewable energy resources. See, so when poles are melting, it's automatically environment is degrading, but due to socio-political, geopolitical interests, people and the governments would look at the economic advantage more than the environment preservation. That is the main problem, which author is the passage is implying. Next one, which of the following best captures the author's central argument? Melting of polar caps is primarily a scientific puzzle rather than a moral challenge. The polar regions have always been misunderstood due to their remoteness. The loss of polar ice destabilizes not only ecological systems but also human frameworks of meaning. Exactly. See, this passage, even if it looks like scientific, it has got a lot of philosophy and psychology mentioned. See the tone of option C balances fairly between the two worlds of philosophy and science. Global warming will eventually reverse due to Earth's natural cycles, but this is not the argument. So we'll go with C because it balances both the science, technicalities, and the philosophy. Cool. Yeah, sure, exactly. So the correct sequence is B, 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 and C. B, 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 C. I hope you are posting your solutions. So if you see there's a link, just post your scores over there. I want to see the scores. वहां पोस्ट कर दो जाके +3 for correct, -1 for wrong. Sure. Okay, I'll have that link as well. So this passage was essentially kind of easy on easy level, right? But then cat can throw easy horses at you as well. Okay. शुभम मैंने तो बोला था हर एक आरसी वाइज कर दो, मैंने ऊपर लिखा हुआ था, तो अगर कर पाओ तो कर दो क्योंकि मैं ना एक आई एम गोइंग टू डाउनलोड समथिंग ओवर हियर, सो आई थिंक यू कैन जस्ट write it till the time I'm downloading this, the third RC for today. Okay. Yeah, Jen, yes. So you were asking irony and metaphor, right? So before I go, people, you can just hope your post your scores till then. I'm explaining what metaphor and irony means to Ajay. See, Ajay, what happens to understand metaphor, you need to understand simile as well. Like if I say grammatically, in terms of how it is written. So if two things are compared with the words like or as, he is like this, he is like that, he's as good as something. So whenever we use like or as, that is simile. Simile, we compare, simile, similarity. Metaphor, in a way, is also analogous. The only difference is that we don't use the term like or as. That is one way of writing it. Okay. Now, so you must have heard the terms like the wall of Indian cricket. It was Rahul Dravid. All right. So the wall here is a metaphor because he's the person who is probably because he used to, he did not get bowled, he did not get out because he was standing. He had the highest record, the record of uh, what do you say, the longest time in terms of hours or something to stand on the pitch. So the wall becomes a metaphor. So metaphor is basically when you compare people to something or someone without direct comparison. You don't compare them directly, you compare them indirectly. That is metaphor. Coming to irony. Irony is something, when something is said and to prove something, there is a motive behind doing something. But when we do that, something unwanted also happens. Irony can be different types, situational, dramatic, different types. But if I call it, universal definition, because if I talk about irony, I'll take 1 hour. It in itself is a kind of subject, situational, dramatic, the multiple kind of ironies. Normally speaking, irony is like, um, let's say I talk about uh, equal gender rights and I'm homophobic. That is the irony. Getting it? That's the irony. Do you understand that? So, in theory, I'm talking about the equal rights, but in practice, I'm homophobic. I don't like, so that is what irony is. That is the kind of a behavior, my behavior that is ironical. My belief that is ironical. Is that clear? So, now we'll go to the next. Avi has understood understood it properly. Okay, so next is the next RC. Here we go. Yes, this is the next RC. Let me go through the questions first. 40 seconds for each question. Correct, yes. It meant ऐसे शायद है, ऐसे typo हो गया. Okay, next question. All right, so here starts your time to read this entirely. It's 11:44. Read till 11:48. स्लॉट 2 वालों को 12 बजे से ये भी करना है ना, मॉक, तो खत्म कर देंगे फटाफट उसको. 11:48 तक पढ़ो, फिर सॉल्व करेंगे और उसके बाद मैं समझाऊंगा, 12 बजे एग्जैक्ट खत्म कर देंगे. ओके, आई एम गोइंग ऑन म्यूट नाउ. All right. So let's discuss the passage and try to find the answers. Water scarcity is often framed. पहले questions पढ़ लेता हूँ. The passage suggests that water scarcity becomes politically volatile primarily because it forces governments to invest more in environmental research, turns resource allocation into decisions that advantage some groups over others, encourages citizens to reduce consumption voluntarily, eliminates the need for centralized regulation. Politically volatile. So we have to focus on wherever political volatility has been mentioned. All right. Now, second is what does the author imply about hydro hegemony? जहाँ पे imply करेंगे वहीं पे हम इसे पढ़ लेंगे. फिलहाल options नहीं पढ़ रहा इसके मैं. Which of the following, if true, would most make weaken the author's argument that scarcity fuels anticipatory conflict? Anticipatory, that is something in future, going to happen in future, right? So scarcity fuels anticipatory conflict. Probably um, um, the people or the nations or whatever there is might be thinking about maybe in future there is a fear of future losing in future. That is why conflict might arise. Okay. Which of the following best expresses the author's central claim? Central claim वही होगा जो हर पैसेज में बार बार रिपीट किया गया होगा. Let's see. First, water scarcity is often framed as an environmental crisis, but its most disruptive consequences emerge in the political domain. यही बात शुरू हो गई. The way the passage opens up, so a lot of you feel that passage was difficult. Okay, but in the first line itself, the author has established a fact that probably, most probably, he or she will be talking about um, less about environment, more about political stability, instability, whatever. Nations do not merely face diminishing water supplies, they confront the collapse of assumptions upon which modern political order has been built. The belief that essential resources will remain predictably available. When water becomes uncertain, the stability of borders, legitimacy of governments, and the ethics of distribution all shift. What appears to be a hydrological problem is in reality the reconfiguration of power. Okay. So somehow I think that the main idea will be, central idea will be this, more about the power, the politics, less about the environment. Okay, let's see. The political volatility of water scarcity stems from its dual nature as both a basic human right and a strategic asset. Governments must guarantee access to water to uphold social legitimacy, yet the same resource is instrumental in agriculture, industry, and energy production. Thus, decisions about water allocation inevitably produce winners and losers. ठीक है, बार बार लिखा हुआ है. When scarcity intensifies, this decision becomes zero sum. What is zero sum? That whatever you know, input, output, everything is same. Transforming resource management into political calculus, a government's survival may hinge on diverting rivers towards electoral strongholds or restricting supply to regions considered politically expendable. Scarcity does not create authoritarianism, it amplifies the incentives for coercive control. So basically, here comes the politics. Let's say uh, I run a nation in which there are rivers, and those rivers go to the neighboring nations as well. And if I feel that my nation is going to um, face a water crisis, what I'll do, I'll try to build dams, hold the rivers so that it does not go to the other nations. Okay, that happens every time. वो बोलते नहीं है चाइना वाले कि हम ब्रह्मपुत्र रोक देंगे, इंडिया बोलते इंडस रोक देंगे, पाकिस्तान बर्बाद हो जाएगा, etc. All of you understand that? This is the most realistic example which all of you know about. Yes or no? Tell me. That is coercive control. Compounding this is the asymmetry between those who consume water and those who control its sources. Cities depend on rivers born in mountains hundreds of kilometers away. Farmers depend, ठीक है सारा बोला हुआ है. Farmers, उसके आगे बोला हुआ है, climate changes alters rainfall patterns. Upstream, downstream communities are thrust into conflict. Internationally, this dynamic manifests as hegemony, power control, where nations positioned at the heads of river systems, such as Ethiopia on the Nile or China on the Mekong, wield disproportionate power. Control of upstream reservoir allows these states to influence the economic stability, food security, and diplomatic posture of downstream nations. You understand that upstream में जहां से नदी निकल रही है, जहां पे ऊंचाई है. Yes, Ankit. Water becomes a geopolitical lever as a resource whose flow determines the flow of political outcomes. Ironically, scarcity does not always catalyze cooperation, even though collective action would appear rational. Instead, scarcity fuels what political theorists call anticipatory conflict. इस पे हमें आंसर मिल जाएगा. States escalate tensions not because water has already declined, but because they fear future vulnerability. Let's see. ये वाला क्वेश्चन हम आंसर कर सकते हैं इसके थ्रू, isn't it? Which, if true, would most weaken the author's argument that scarcity fuels anticipatory conflict. Okay. Historical data shows most river sharing agreements emerge in periods of extreme drought. States with shared river systems often form military alliances for unrelated reasons. Countries tend to engage in conflict only after experiencing multiple consecutive years of actual water shortages. Urban populations often consume more water per capita than rural populations. So any option that mentions that governments or states, nations do not engage in any kind of conflict before the real damage happens, that will be the most weakening thing, which is in option C. Okay, countries tend to engage in conflict only after experiencing multiple consecutive years. तो मतलब anticipatory नहीं है ये. Anticipation क्या होता है कि if something happens, we'll prepare for it. But here, the thing has happened. That is what goes against the entire argument. Is that clear? This is C. Okay, let's go ahead. This is especially valid in regions where distrust between neighbors is historically embedded. Water becomes the stage on which old rivalries are reenacted under new pressures. Yet the politics of scarcity also exposes an ethical tension. How should societies allocate a resource that sustains life? Traditional economic logic treats water as a commodity whose price reflects scarcity. Political logic treats it as a right immune to market forces. Neither framework fully captures water's paradoxical nature. What is paradoxical nature of water? Economic logic in which we see water as commodity, right? And political logic where we see it as immune to market forces. So this is the paradoxical nature. Treat it purely as a right and overconsumption becomes inevitable. Treat it purely as a commodity and the poor are priced out of survival. Okay, so this is the paradox. If water is a right, then there might be overconsumption. Right है, हम कुछ भी कर सकते हैं. And if it is a commodity, then poor will be, obviously they will be wiped out of survival because it will be pricey. The challenge is that water scarcity undermines the conceptual categories public good, private good, economic resource, moral entitlement upon which modern policy is built. At a deeper level, water scarcity reveals humanity's uneasy relationship with uncertainty. Modern political institutions were designed around predictable hydrological patterns, stable monsoons, snow melt cycles. Okay, when those patterns reveal, the legitimacy of institutions unravels with them. Citizens who once saw water as a natural guarantee now view its absence as political failure. Right? Governments are punished not merely. So this is not a very difficult thing. We don't have to, kind of totally invest yourself into this kind of passage because you read the questions and you know what has to be looked at, the cues, but for their inability to control the uncontrollable. Thus, the politics of water scarcity is not simply about droughts or declining aquifers, it is about the erosion of political imagination that presupposed environmental stability. तो पहले से था कि environment stable होगा, पानी मिलेगा, लेकिन ऐसा नहीं हो रहा है. This is the erosion of not the water, erosion of not the resources, but the political imagination. The crisis is not only ecological or economic, it is conceptual. Water scarcity forces society to confront the uncomfortable truth that political order is built on national conditions that politics itself cannot secure. So I can just answer the main idea, central claim. What is the central claim here? Water scarcity is primarily scientific problem? No. जहाँ पे politics वाला आएगा वही होगा हमारा. Melting of glaciers, not mentioned. Water scarcity destabilizes political assumptions. Market-based water pricing is the only viable approach. C is the correct one. That is the main idea, central idea. All right. हमने C और D क्वेश्चन 3 और 4 कर दिया है. Author imply about hydro hegemony. Inevitable whenever river flows across international borders arises from geographical control of upstream resources. Exactly. So hydro hegemony, whenever the nations are upstream, they are the ones who control the water, right? So hegemony is power control, hydro is water. So B is the best one. C says it rarely influences downstream nations. It actually influences. It refers to large nations monopolizing global freshwater trade. It can imply, but B is a more direct option than D. That's where we go with B here. Passage suggests that, okay, water scarcity becomes politically volatile primarily because of what? So first is scarcity. It becomes volatile because first is scarcity. Scarcity happens. Then comes the politics, right? Then comes the who wins and who loses, right? And then comes the volatility. So primarily because of what? Scarcity, politics, this or this. Forces governments to invest more in environmental research, turns resource allocation decisions at advantage some groups over others, encourages citizens to reduce consumption voluntarily, eliminates the need for centralized regulation. Okay, some see scarcity, politics, wins and loses. So this is some groups over the others. The immediate reason is B. All right, that is the immediate reason. समझ में आई है? पहले स्कैरसिटी होती है, उससे फिर उसी में फिर पॉलिटिकल कैलकुलस अराइजेस एंड देन वी टॉक अबाउट द जीरो सम. देखो यहाँ पे गौरव तुमने सी मार्क किया है, यहाँ पे जीरो सम था. जीरो सम. Zero sum is basically who wins and who loses. So that is going to be the immediate reasoning behind marking B. Clear? Shubham, question number 3. Yes, I can explain that. Anticipatory conflict. So anticipatory, what is anticipation? What's anticipation? Anticipation is something, you anticipate. So you feel that something is going to happen in future. And that is why you take protective measures, right? Is that right? You understand that? So once we understood that, we want to weaken this claim. We want to weaken this claim. So if something, the governments, the states, they have a conflict over, there's an anticipatory conflict, something might happen, something bad might happen in future, so let's have a conflict, right? But in this case, if you want to weaken that, then we would just look for the option in which something would not happen in the future, but it has happened already in the present. So C is the only option which talks about that conflict happens only after experiencing multiple years of actual water shortage. That means something has happened, then only conflict is happening. It is not anticipatory conflict. It's the real conflict. Clear? Okay, Avaral. Question 4. Author central claim. देखो सेंट्रल क्लेम ऑथर का क्या है, ये पूरी बात में इन्वायरमेंट से ज्यादा सी पॉलिटिक्स पॉलिटिकल compass is greater than environment in this entire passage. Which one talks about that? Only option C, because it is mentioned in all the paragraphs in some or other way about the political compass, political calculus, not about the environment. Environment mention किया गया है, but ये नहीं बोला गया ना कि पानी बचाए कैसे जाए, scarcity हो तो क्या तरीके करने चाहिए. You understand this? This passage, which is from the environment genre, it's a mix of environment and politics, geopolitics to be precise. So, if it is a purely environmental passage, it will talk about water scarcity and the what are the disadvantages of water scarcity and how to control that and what are the remedial measures. That becomes a proper environmental genre RC passage, right? Getting it? I'm good. But in this case, it's not a it's environment plus politics. It has got two, it is mixed genre. So politics, environment is obviously the main genre, but but politics is the I would say the secondary genre or supporting genre, right? So that is the reason that we have to somehow balance between environment and politics and look at that as the central claim of the author. दोनों बातों को उसने equal weightage दिया है. Environment के नाम पे ही politics की बात की गई. So politics is a huge umbrella, but here environment is the huge umbrella in which how politics is played. That is why we'll go for option C. Clear? That's all. So next RC must be on what? 1.5 से करना था, हो गया. स्लॉट 2 वालों का भी मॉक होगा. Okay, Akash. Next must be on what? Tell me. And all of you, just write your scores over there. Animals. Animals show animals कोई genre थोड़ी ना है. तुम क्या कहना है सिर्फ एनिमल का कोई एक डाल देंगे जैसे कि बायोलॉजी साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी मैंने कर दिया है. ठीक है काम करते हैं. आई विल डू समथिंग ऑन अ मिक्स ऑफ एंथ्रोपोलॉजी प्लस biology. Okay, next will be on this history, polity, astronomy. बहुत सही टाइम की रखी है ना इसमें कि भाई आप लोग के जब मॉक्स हैं उस टाइम में क्लास नहीं होगा. मॉक्स नहीं तो साथ में क्लास ले लो. दैट इज गोइंग टू हेल्प यू लॉट. सो दिस अब मैं एक प्लेलिस्ट बना दूंगा. मार्क आई विल मार्क द प्लेलिस्ट दैट एवरी डे आई एम कमिंग लाइव फॉर 3 times and revising everything in the last lap of cat. All right. एनिमल बेस्ड आरसी हाँ आए थे वो. मैं जानता हूँ तो उसको मतलब किस एनिमल कोई एक जॉनर नहीं है ना तो मैं ये कर देता हूँ एंथ्रोपोलॉजी प्लस बायोलॉजी जहाँ पे आ जाएगा. चलो कल ये कर लेते हैं. बाकी हिस्ट्री पॉलिटी ये सब भी कल सब करके कर लेंगे. हाँ यार कल इस पे कर लेते हैं एंथ्रोपोलॉजी एंड बायोलॉजी. ओके देन विल मीट अगेन एट 3 विद LRDI. ठीक है ना. सब लोग आ जाना उसमें और अपने स्कोर्स पोस्ट कर दो. बाय बाय टेक केयर. यस आकाश. अंकित ये मत लिखो. एक रिक्वेस्ट है फिर मैं बोलूंगा बताओ फिर तुम पूछोगे. प्रॉब्लम ये एकदम सामने मेरे हो नहीं. तुम कमेंट करो. कमेंट लेट आता है. डायरेक्टली रिक्वेस्ट डाल दिया करो. एक रिक्वेस्ट है आगे क्या है बता दिया करो. अब मेरे को वेट करना पड़ रहा है रिक्वेस्ट के लिए. एस्ट्रोनॉमी तो बिल्कुल शुभम वो तो मैंने रखा ही है. एस्ट्रोनॉमी तो वैसे ही मेरा बहुत ही फेवरेट टाइप का है यार. बचपन में मेरा मन एस्ट्रोनॉमर बनने का ही था. लेकिन अब बहुत कुछ बनने का मन था. जब उसमें कुछ नहीं नहीं बन पाया तो मैं ठीक है जितना ज्ञान प्राप्त किया उसको राइटिंग में डाल देते हैं. तो राइटिंग करने लगा. फिर देखा कि एक कैट सब्जेक्ट कैट एक ऐसा एग्जाम है जहाँ पे आरसी के अंदर सब कुछ पढ़ाने के बाद बात करने का मौका मिल जाएगा. तो इसलिए मैं आरसी पढ़ाता हूँ. मैथ्स नेचुरली अच्छी थी तो वो करने लगा. तो ऐसा हो गया मतलब बेसिकली मन तो मेरा एस्ट्रोनॉमर बनने का ही था यार. मतलब मेरा मन था कि मैं स्पेस में जाऊं. चलो कोई बात नहीं. जो होना था हो चुका अब तो. तो अंकित थैंक यू फॉर दैट. चलो बाय बाय टेक केयर. फील्ड्स मेडल ह्यूज ऑनर. ओके थैंक यू.